You've seen him, haven't you? The one-eyed man with the worn Stetson.
He's always hanging around that dusty truck stop out on the Navajo Nation.
Just watching the kids.
I know you have.
Everyone who passes through this part of the desert eventually notices him.
He's as much a fixture around here as the cracked asphalt. Just another part of the endless horizon.
He's a silent sentinel, lean, weathered, and quiet. And then there's that scar tracing the empty socket where his left eye should be.
Most days, he just sits there. Usually on that faded wooden bench right outside the convenience store.
Or maybe leaning against the bed of an old sun-bleached pickup.
His gaze is always fixed.
Totally unwavering. He's watching the low kids. The ones darting around the gas pumps while their folks fill up.
Or playing in the dirt near the roadside diner.
He never looks away.
Not even for a second.
People whisper about him, of course. They call him the Cowboy or One-Eyed Jack. They wonder if he's just some drifter.
Maybe a forgotten veteran.
Or just a lonely guy with way too much time on his hands.
Some folks actually find his presence kinda unsettling. Like his constant vigilance is just a little too intense.
It creeps them out.
But they don't understand.
Not really. Not really.
They only see the surface. Just the dust, the heat, and the cheap gas.
The mundane transactions of a forgotten roadside stop.
They buy their snacks and they drive away.
They don't see the unseen wilderness pressing in on all sides.
The ancient power humming right beneath this red earth.
Warning, they don't know about the dangers out there.
The things that lurk in the silence between heartbeats. I'm an elder of this land. My roots are tangled deep in its soil, just like the mesquite and the juniper. My name is Hózhó, and I've walked these canyons and mesas for 87 years. I know the truth. I've seen the sun come up over Monument Valley more times than I can count. And I've heard the wind carry the voices of our ancestors right through these desert nights. I know all the old stories. The ones we whisper around the campfire when the stars are so bright they almost seem to hum. The ones that keep you awake. And I know the real truth about the one-eyed cowboy. He isn't just sitting there watching the world go by. He's guarding us. He's standing right between our kids and a predator that's older and more cunning than you can even imagine. He's guarding against the mimic. You see, this truck stop isn't just a place to grab a snack and fill up your tank. For generations, it's been a crossroads. A place where the veil between worlds gets awfully thin. The paved road basically ends right here. Beyond it is this massive, untamed maze of canyons and arroyos. It's a place where ancient spirits still walk. But where spirits walk, ancient hungers still stalk. And the mimic, like my people call it, is one of those hungers. It's always out there, waiting. It's not an animal, and it's not a ghost. It's not even a skinwalker, at least not the way most outsiders think of them. It's something way worse. It's a creature made of pure deception. Born right out of the isolation of the desert and the feeling of lost trust. It feeds on that separation. It doesn't hunt with teeth and claws. It hunts with sound. It uses a familiar voice to lure you in, making it the ultimate betrayal. It started real quiet, like most bad things do. Generations back, when the first outsiders started coming through our lands. They brought trade routes, strangers, and a whole lot of new vulnerabilities. The desert's always been tough.
But we knew the rules.
We understood the mountain lions, the rattlesnakes, the flash floods.
Those were things you could actually see and fight.
But this thing, it was completely different.
It didn't just hunt. It learned and adapted. It would hide out in the canyons, just waiting in the shadows of the setting sun.
It would just sit there and listen to the kids.
It soaked up their laughter, their little songs, the way they yelled for their moms and dads.
It was stealing the very sound of who they were.
Then, one day, a kid would wander just a bit too far. Maybe they were chasing a bug or playing a game, and they'd cross that invisible line.
Suddenly, they were all alone out there.
That's when a voice would call out from the rocks. Not a monster's growl, but a voice sounding exactly like their mom or dad. It was a perfect trick, and they couldn't help but follow it.
My great-grandmother used to tell me stories about those days.
Even now, I can still hear the fear shaking in her voice. It left a scar on our people that never really faded. She talked about a time when kids would just vanish. No tracks from wolves, no signs of getting lost in the heat. They just walked away, following a voice they loved right into the dark. They'd follow that stolen voice deeper and deeper into the wild. The mimic led them so far out, no search party was ever going to find them. The desert just swallowed them up. But the sickest part came days later. Parents would hear their kid's voice echoing out of the canyons, calling their names. It was twisting their grief into a joke, feeding off their broken hearts. The early days were a straight-up nightmare. Our bravest warriors were totally helpless against something that sounded just like their own family. They'd spend all night chasing echoes through the canyons, only to come back completely broken. The mimic fed on all that fear, getting stronger with every kid it took. It just kept adding more stolen voices to its collection. So the elders got together to pray, begging the desert spirits for some kind of answer. The answer finally came in a vision to a holy man named Ka. The spirits showed him that this thing still had rules it had to follow. It could only copy a voice it had already heard, and it definitely couldn't fake pure silence. But the most important thing the vision showed was the mimic's biggest weakness. It was absolutely terrified of a very specific kind of sight. It couldn't stand the gaze of a single eye. It was a heavy burden, asking for a crazy sacrifice. The vision told Ka he had to give up his left eye to get this special sight. He did it through a sacred ritual, pushing right through the unreal pain. When it was over, the wound healed up perfectly smooth. But his one good eye saw the world totally differently now. He could actually hear the tiny, unnatural glitches in the mimic's stolen voices. He didn't even need to see it anymore. He could just feel this freezing void where life was supposed to be. And the mimic? It was completely creeped out by him and just wanted to get away. So Ka stepped up and became our very first guardian. He spent the rest of his life patrolling the edges of the camps. Any time that fake voice called out, Ka was already there. He knew fighting it head-on was a fool's errand. Instead, he'd just gently guide the lost kids back home. Just him showing up was enough to break the illusion and send that thing running. Whenever the mimic got too hungry, the spirit of the one-eyed protector would wake up in one of Ka's descendants. Losing that eye was their permanent mark. And that ancient bloodline is exactly what brings us to Ta today. Ta didn't just volunteer for this. He inherited the burden through a long bloodline stretching back to Ka. And he wasn't born missing an eye either. He started out completely whole, just a boisterous kid. He grew up on a small ranch not far from here.
Learned to ride horses before he could even properly walk.
His whole childhood was spent outdoors, his laughter echoing across those wide-open plains. As he got older, he spent his days tending sheep and cattle under that vast Navajo sky.
He had this deep, resonant voice that carried for miles.
Honestly, he seemed destined for a simple, hard-working life. But the ancient call of your ancestors doesn't really care about your plans.
The duty always finds its way.
I remember Ta as a young man, maybe 20 or 21, right around the time his life changed forever. The truck stop was already there back then, serving as a bustling hub for travelers and locals. It was a place to catch up. Kids would always be playing around the edges of the parking lot while their parents ran errands. It happened on one particularly sweltering afternoon. A little girl, no older than 5, was playing near the edge of the asphalt. Her mom was just a few feet away, distracted for only a split second.
In that brief window of time, the little girl wandered off. She stepped away from the safety of the truck stop.
And just like that, she disappeared into the dense, dry scrub brush bordering the desert. Her mom turned around to check on her, only to find empty space. Panic immediately seized the whole place. Her desperate cries echoed across the parking lot, cutting right through the heat. Everyone dropped what they were doing and started searching. We all knew the natural dangers out there. The unforgiving sun, the steep drops, the coyotes. People scattered into the brush, shouting, calling her name as loud as they could. But as I listened to the commotion, a sudden chill ran through my old bones. It was this familiar, suffocating dread. The moment I heard that mother crying, I knew it wasn't just the desert that took her. I could feel the mimic's shadow stretching. Young Todd didn't waste a second joining the search. He rode his horse hard through those winding arroyos, shouting the little girl's name until his throat was raw. He knew they had to find her before the desert night swallowed her up. Hours dragged on, and there was still no sign of her. The sun started dipping below the horizon, painting the sky in these violent, bruised colors. As the air got colder, you could feel the panic really starting to set in. Then, out of nowhere, a faint sound drifted from a distant canyon. It was a kid's giggle, followed by her mom's voice calling out, sounding so clear and sweet. Everyone just stopped in their tracks, thinking she was finally safe. But my old heart just clenched up. That voice was way too perfect, carrying too cleanly across the rocks. I knew the mimic's sick tricks, and I recognized exactly what it was doing. I tried to warn them, but they were already rushing toward the sound. Todd was young and eager, so he spurred his horse forward, getting way ahead of the back. He rode straight into that darkening canyon, totally blind to the trap. He was the first one to reach the sound deep inside that rocky maze. He spotted the little girl standing by a dry creek bed, just staring up at the canyon wall. She was actually smiling, reaching her tiny hand out into the shadows. Then, this figure slowly crept out from the rocks. It didn't even look solid, just shimmering at the edges like heat haze, even though it was freezing out. It kept using her mom's exact voice, trying to coax her deeper into the dark. Ta didn't even hesitate. This ancient instinct just took over his whole body. He threw himself off his horse and let out this massive yell, completely shattering the thing's illusion. The creature jerked back, letting out this awful hiss that sounded like sand scraping over bone.
But it wasn't given up that easy. As Ta grabbed the girl, the mimic lashed out, blasting this wave of pure, dark energy right at his face.
The pain wasn't just physical. It was this blinding, soul-crushing agony.
He collapsed into the dirt, wrapping his body around the little girl to shield her.
That was the exact moment the mimic took his left eye, turning him into the guardian he is today.
When the rest of the search party finally caught up, they found him passed out in the dirt.
The little girl was safe, just shaking in his arms. But the silence in that canyon was heavy.
When they turned him over, they saw what it cost him.
His left eye was just gone.
No blood, no wound.
The socket was completely smooth, like it had never even been there.
The mimic didn't just hurt him.
It was trying to blind the guardian before he could even wake up to what he was. But the thing made a mistake. Its attack didn't break him.
It actually finished his transformation.
When Ta finally woke up a few days later, he wasn't the same kid anymore.
That one remaining eye held this deep, heavy wisdom. He looked like a man who had seen the other side.
He didn't talk much about what happened out there in the dark. He just wanted to know the girl was safe. He wore that empty socket like a badge, not a scar.
The spirit of the first guardian had found its new vessel.
From that day on, Ta walked away from his old life. He gave up the ranch, his dreams of having a family, all of it. He traded a normal future for a life of constant watching. His duty became his whole world. That dusty truck stop out on the edge of the res became his post. It's a crossroads, a place where the line between worlds gets real thin. And it's exactly where the kids are the most vulnerable.
So, he took his seat on that old bench and he started watching.
The world's changed a lot since the old days.
Kids now are always staring at screens, totally tuned out from everything around them.
They aren't connected to the land or its warnings anymore, and that makes them incredibly easy targets for the mimic.
The mimic loves all this modern distraction.
It hides right out in the open, in the dust devils spinning across the parking lot.
It just listens to the tourists talking, soaking it all in.
Always learning new voices, new ways to trick people. But Ta learned its new tricks too. He sits there every single day through the brutal heat and the freezing wind. That one eye is always scanning. He knows exactly when a kid wanders just a little too close to the edge. He can hear the slightest waver in a voice that just ain't right, or that tiny delay in an echo that doesn't belong. He knows exactly when that thing is testing the waters, trying to lure a kid away. I've watched him work more times than I can count. He never makes a scene or gets all dramatic about it. That's just not his style.
He uses this quiet, heavy presence to break the creature's spell.
When he feels it out there, he just stands up from that old bench. He moves slow and deliberate, walking right toward whoever's in danger. He doesn't run, but you can feel the heavy purpose in every step he takes. Sometimes he just stands near the kid, and that's enough. His quiet presence alone messes with the mimic's concentration and makes the whole illusion fall apart. The kid never even knows how close they came to the edge. Other times, he'll gently tap him on the shoulder or hand him a little desert stone. He might just strike up a quick chat about the weather or some stray dog.
His voice is gruff, but it's got this deep truth that cuts right through the lies.
Once it knows the gig is up, the mimic always backs off.
It just fades away like a whisper of wind through the dust. Nothing left but a weird shadow slipping back into the canyons to wait for another shot. It's a real lonely life, being the guardian. He barely talks to anyone unless he's stepping in to protect a kid. He doesn't have a family of his own anymore. That normal life ended the day he lost his eye.
He carries this massive weight all by himself, like a silent soldier in a war nobody else sees. Folks pass through and just think he's some weird, lonely old drifter. They have no clue about the terrifying responsibility he's carrying.
He can't afford to get close to anyone, 'cause that thing is way too cunning. It learns your weaknesses, twists your love, and turns trust into a weapon. Losing his eye was just the start. He really gave up his whole life. There was this one time recently that really showed me how deep his commitment goes. A young tourist family stopped for gas, totally clueless about what's out there. Their little boy got obsessed with a bright red ball that rolled under a trailer. His mom was by their SUV, hollering at him to leave it. But the kid was hooked. He dropped to his knees on the hot asphalt, ready to crawl under that rusted metal. Right as he reached out, a voice whispered from the shadows under the rig. It was soft, sweet, and sounded exactly like his mother. "Come on, little one," it said.
It's safe.
The imitation was flawless. But his real mom was still standing by the car door, her back completely turned. Her actual voice was way off in the distance.
It was a trap. I saw Tom move from across the lot.
He didn't sprint, but he covered that ground with this unnerving, fluid speed. He knew what was happening before anyone else caught on. He reached the trailer right as the kid was about to vanish underneath. Todd dropped to one knee, his face totally grim. He threw himself between the boy and the darkness. He didn't say a word. He just stared hard into those shadows. And right then, I saw a flicker under the rig. A ripple in the air, shrinking back from his gaze. The little guy was totally startled. He froze, looking up at this weathered stranger with a scarred eye. Just like that, the spell of that sweet, fake voice was broken. Taw reached under the metal, but not for the toy. He gently grabbed the kid's arm and pulled him out of the shadows. He dragged him back into the safety of the sun. He still didn't speak. He just gave the boy a firm look, like a silent warning, and nodded toward his mom. The kid scrambled right back to his family. Taw stood back up, keeping his eye locked on that dark space for a long minute, just making sure it was gone. Then he walked back to his bench. That red ball stayed in the dark. The thing under that trailer. It's not human. But it's ancient, and it's deeply malicious. It understands our patterns, our fears, and the irresistible pull of a familiar voice.
It doesn't need to eat your body.
It just wants your sound, your essence. It wants to steal your identity and turn you into an empty vessel for its sick games. Imagine having your own voice used against you. Used to trick the people you love most. That's the real horror of the mimic.
And that's exactly what Ta is protecting us from.
His job is never really done. Since the mimic isn't exactly alive, you can't kill it. It's like a spiritual sickness on the land.
Born from the wild and from our own human weaknesses.
It's always gonna be out there, lurking in the shadows of the canyons, listening to the wind, waiting for just one moment of distraction.
So Ta has to stay out there too.
His whole life is just one long watch. He's the bridge between the old ways and the modern world, keeping kids safe from something they can't even comprehend. Sometimes, when the moon is full and the air gets still,
I'll walk over to the truck stop.
I don't say much to him.
There's really no need for words between us.
I'll just bring him some coffee or fry bread.
He takes it with a slow nod, but his eye never really leaves the dark.
He feels it out there, always. He can never truly rest.
We share this silent understanding,
A mutual respect for the heavy burden he carries.
the invisible battles he fights every single day.
It takes a special kind of strength to live like that.
His commitment shows the true strength of our people. It's the understanding that some duties are bigger than what we want for ourselves. He's the definition of selflessness.
A quiet hero keeping our world from falling apart. So the next time you're driving through the Navajo Nation,
Taking in all these beautiful, wide-open spaces,
just remember that this land holds secrets older than the roads.
you'll probably pull off at a spot just like this one.
Gotta stretch your legs. Maybe let the kids run around for a minute.
Totally clueless about what's actually waiting just past the pavement.
And that's when you're gonna see him.
The one-eyed cowboy with the worn-out Stetson just sitting there.
People think he's just some lonely old guy with nowhere to be. But I need you to remember what I've told you. Listen to the wind when it kicks up the dust across that parking lot.
There are terrible hungers out there, roaming the silent spaces.
The mimic is always watching from the edges, hiding right where the asphalt turns into dirt and sagebrush.
just waiting for someone to wander a little too far from the light.
He's not just watching the kids play. He's the guardian.
The absolute last line of defense between those innocent lives and a nightmare.
Because of what he gave up, those kids get to keep laughing.
Their voices stay their own, echoing around the gas pumps.
They get to be completely oblivious to the horrors out there.
And he's gonna keep watching.
He has to. Because if he ever let his guard down for even a second, the mimic would take its prize.
Without him, the desert winds wouldn't just be blowing sand.
They'd be carrying the stolen, mocking voices of the lost.
And man, that's a silence way too deep for any of us to handle.
So next time you see him sitting by that store, just give a little nod
To the silent warrior keeping the shadows at bay.
I'm an elder of this land. My roots are tangled deep in its soil, just like the mesquite and the juniper. My name is Hózhó. I've walked these canyons and mesas for 87 years. I've seen a lot of things change, but the land, it remembers.
I've seen the sun rise over Monument Valley more times than I can count. And I've heard the wind carry the voices of our ancestors through the desert nights. There's a rhythm to this place.
A heartbeat that most folks just drive right over without ever feeling.
I know the old stories.
The ones we whisper around campfires when the stars are so bright they almost seem to hum.
And because I know those stories,
I know the truth about the one-eyed cowboy. He isn't just sitting there watching the cars go by. He's guarding. He's standing right between our kids and a predator that's older and more cunning than you could ever imagine. You see, that truck stop isn't just a place to grab gas and a snack.
It's a crossroads.
It's where the paved road ends and the real wilderness begins. Out there, it's a maze of canyons and arroyos. A place where the veil between worlds gets awfully thin.
And where ancient hungers are still stalking in the shadows.
We call it the mimic. It's not an animal, and it's not a ghost.
It's a creature of pure deception, and it hunts with the ultimate betrayal, a stolen voice.
It started real quiet, like all the worst things do. A couple 100 years back, the outside world finally started creeping in.
Trade routes brought strangers, and with them, a whole new kind of trouble.
Now, the desert's always been tough, but we knew the rules. We understood the mountain lions, the rattlers, the sudden flash floods. Those were honest dangers.
But this thing, it was entirely different.
It wasn't an animal you could track or a storm you could wait out.
It just sat out there in the dark, learning.
Chilling realization. It adapted, and most of all, it listened. It would hide deep in the canyons, right where the shadows get thickest at sundown.
Just waiting out of sight.
And it would listen to the kids.
It soaked up their laughter, their little songs.
It memorized the way they'd call out for their moms and dads. Just collecting those sounds piece by piece. Then, one afternoon, a kid would wander just a bit too far. Maybe chasing a bug, or just playing some game. Suddenly, they're all alone out there in the brush.
And that's when a voice would call out to him.
Not a growl, not a hiss. A voice that sounded exactly like their own mother. Or maybe their dad. Or their best friend. It used the people they loved most as bait, twisting that trust into the ultimate trap. My great-grandmother used to tell me these stories. Her voice would get real low, shaking with a fear I can still feel today. Even 80 years later, it hangs in the air. She talked about a time when kids would just vanish. No wolves took them, they didn't just get lost. They walked away on their own, following a voice they loved right into the dark. Days later, the real nightmare would start. Parents out searching would hear their kid's voice bouncing off the canyon walls. But it wasn't a cry for help. It was just a twisted echo of their own desperate pleading. That's how our people finally figured it out. This thing wasn't just taking the kids physically. It was stealing their actual essence, their identity. It used those stolen voices as bait for the next one, just feeding on all that broken trust. Man, those early days were a total nightmare. Our best warriors were completely helpless against something that sounded exactly like their own family. They'd ride out ready for a fight, only to freeze up when they heard those familiar voices in the dark. They'd end up chasing these phantom echoes deep into the maze of the canyons, firing arrows at shifting shadows, just hoping to hit something real. But they always came back empty-handed, their spirits totally crushed. The mimic just thrived on all that fear and chaos. With every kid it took, it got stronger and way more bold. Its collection of stolen voices kept growing, hanging over the camps like a suffocating dark cloud. Desperate for a way out, The elders got together to ask for help. They prayed, sang the old songs, and reached out to the spirits of the land.
They knew regular weapons weren't going to do a thing against this illusion.
The answer finally came in a powerful vision to a holy man named Ka.
The spirits showed him that the mimic was still bound by physical rules.
It could only copy what it had already heard out loud. The vision also laid out the creature's biggest weakness. Turns out, the mimic had a deep, terrifying fear of a specific kind of sight. It couldn't stand being looked at by someone whose vision wasn't clouded by normal physical duality. To cut through the illusions and see its real form, a guardian needed a singular, focused vision. The spirits told Ka he had to give up his left eye to get this unique sight. It was an incredibly heavy burden to take on. It took unbelievable courage for Ka to accept that painful initiation. That was the exact moment the very first guardian was born. And that sacrifice changed our history forever. He didn't use a blade. It was a sacred, deeply painful ritual. When it was over, the wound healed clean, leaving just a smooth, empty socket. But that one remaining eye, it saw things differently. He could spot the tiny flaws in the mimic's illusions. He heard the unnatural distortion in those stolen voices where everyone else heard truth. He didn't even need to see it to know it was there. He felt it as a chilling void, a cold space where life should be. And the mimic, it was terrified of him. So Ka became our very first guardian. He gave up his normal life to patrol the edges of the camps. He was always out there, listening and watching the shadows. Whenever that false voice rang out, Ka was already there. He knew better than to fight it head-on. Instead, he'd step in quietly, take the child's hand, and guide them home. Just him being there was enough to break the spell. The mimic felt that unclouded stare piercing its disguise. It would hiss and slink back into the shadows, its hunt ruined. It was a lonely, thankless job, but it became a bloodline duty. Not every generation needed a guardian. But when the hunger flared up, Ka's spirit awakened in a descendant. Which brings us to the cowboy. The man you see sitting out there today, his name is Ta. He inherited this heavy burden, carrying that ancient watch into our modern world. Now, Ta wasn't born missing an eye. That's not how it works. He started out completely whole. He was a strong, loud kid with a mischievous spark in both his dark eyes. He learned to ride horses before he could even walk. You could hear his laugh echoing across the plains. He was supposed to have a simple life. But that ancient call always finds its way. Back then, the truck stop was already this busy little hub. Families passing through, kids running around the parking lot while their folks caught up. It felt like a safe spot, you know? Nobody had a clue what was watching them from just past the asphalt. Then came this one sweltering afternoon. A little girl, maybe 5 years old, just kind of wandered off the pavement. Her mom looked away for a split second. By the time she turned back around, the kid was just gone. Panic hit the community instantly. Soon as we heard the mother screaming, everybody dropped what they were doing to help. We all knew how unforgiving the desert could be. You've got the blistering sun, coyotes, the rough terrain. But this felt different. Ta was right out there with us, leading the charge on his horse. He was riding deep into the dry arroyos, shouting her name. His voice just echoed off the canyon walls.
He was so young and eager back then.
He had no idea what he was actually riding into. Hours dragged on, and we found absolutely nothing. Then the sun started to dip, turning the whole sky this violent shade of red. The air got real cold real fast.
And that's when the real fear sets in.
Nobody wants a kid out there in the dark.
Suddenly, this faint sound drifted out of a distant canyon.
It was a little giggle. Then we heard the mother's voice, calling out sweet and clear.
Everybody just stopped in their tracks.
A huge wave of relief washed over the search party.
We thought she was safe.
But my heart just sank into my stomach. That voice, it was way too perfect. It carried through those twisting rocks way too cleanly. I knew exactly what it was. I knew the mimic's tricks. It was a trap, and we were walking right into it. I tried to warn them, but the relief was just too strong. People were already running toward the sound.
Taw spurred his horse and took off ahead of the pack.
He was running purely on adrenaline.
He pushed deeper into those twilight shadows, desperate to reach her first.
He finally spotted her down by a dry creek bed.
She was just standing there, all alone. Her back was to him, looking up at the canyon wall. She had this big smile on her face. She was reaching her little hand out toward the rocks, totally hypnotized. Then, something stepped out from the juniper bushes. It wasn't a person.
It was this blurry, shimmering shape, kind of like a heat wave on the highway.
But the air was freezing. It kept speaking in her mom's exact voice, just coaxing her deeper into the dark. Ta didn't even hesitate. That ancient knowledge surged right through him. It was pure instinct, born from generations of vigilance. He threw himself off his horse, yelling loudly. His voice echoed, completely shattering the creature's illusion. The creature recoiled, shuddering in the fading light. It let out this awful hiss. Sounded like dry sand over bone. But it wasn't about to let its prize go. It started gathering itself, preparing to strike back. Ta'a closed the distance in a heartbeat. He grabbed the little girl and pulled her tight. He turned his back, shielding her with his own body. He braced himself against the cold, unnatural wind. As he covered the child, the mimic lashed out. It wasn't a physical strike. It was a surge of pure, concentrated deception. It focused that dark energy right at Ta's face, targeting the eyes that saw through its trickery. He later told me the pain wasn't physical. It was a searing agony, a tearing away of perception. Ta collapsed to the dirt, holding the girl tight. His face contorted in unimaginable torment. And then the world went completely dark. The other searchers finally caught up. They found a pretty grim scene. Ta was lying in the dirt, completely unconscious. The little girl was safe, trembling in his arms. But he had paid a terrible price. When they turned him over, everyone gasped. His left eye, it was just gone. It wasn't gouged out, and there was no blood. The socket was perfectly smooth, like it never existed. The mimic took it to blind the guardian. But the creature's plan failed. Taking his eye only completed the transformation. When Ta woke up days later, he was changed. His remaining eye held this new, solemn depth, a quiet wisdom that made him seem so much older. He didn't say much about what happened out there. He just wanted to make sure the girl was safe. He carried that empty socket as a badge. The spirit of the first guardian found its vessel. And Ta fully embraced his destiny. From that day on, he gave up his old life. He let go of his dreams of a family. He put on that worn Stetson and took his post. He became the silent watcher we know today. Protecting the innocent became his entire life. This truck stop became his permanent post. It's where the kids are most vulnerable now. They're always staring at screens, totally tuned out from the real world. That makes them easy targets for the mimic. The mimic thrives on all that distraction. It hides right in the dust devils swirling across the lot. It just sits there, listening to people chat, learning new voices, new ways to trick them. But Ta's learned its new tricks, too. Day in and day out, he's right there on that bench. Got his Stetson pulled low, just watching. His one good eye never stops scanning the lot. He's got this crazy sixth sense when it comes to the kids. He spots the ones who look a little lost, or the ones wandering just a bit too close to the edge of the asphalt. He knows exactly when the mimic is testing the waters. He doesn't just watch, he listens. He can hear that tiny waver in a voice that just isn't right. Or a weird little delay in an echo. He catches it the second it tries to lure somebody away. I've watched him work plenty of times. He never makes a big scene about it. There's no drama, no shouting. That's just not his style. He'll just stand up from his bench, real slow, and he walks over to the kid. He doesn't rush, but he moves with total purpose. Just his presence alone is enough to mess with the mimic. Sometimes he just stands right next to them. His energy is so grounded, it breaks the creature's focus. The illusion just starts to fall apart. It can't hold on when he's standing right there. Other times, he'll gently tap him on the shoulder. Maybe hand him a cool little rock he found? He'll just chat with them for a second in that gruff voice of his. And that's all it takes to snap them out of it. Once the mimic knows it's lost, it backs off. It just fades away like a whisper in the dust. A shadow that wasn't really there to begin with. Slinking right back into the wild. It's a lonely road he walks. He barely says a word to anyone unless he absolutely has to. He doesn't have a family of his own anymore. That dream died the day the mimic took his eye. Folks passing through just see a strange, lonely old cowboy. They give him these weird looks, completely clueless about the weight he's carrying. He's fighting a war they don't even know exists. Right there in the parking lot. He can't afford to get close to anyone. The mimic is too smart for that. It looks for your weaknesses, and it uses love against you. It turns trust into a weapon. So his sacrifice wasn't just an eye. It was his whole life. There was this one time, not too long ago, that really showed what he's made of. A young family of tourists pulled up to the pumps for gas. Just a normal pit stop for them. They had no idea what was waiting just past the pavement. Their youngest kid, a little boy about 4 years old, was wandering around. He got completely fixated on this bright red plastic ball. It had rolled off and stopped right underneath a parked, rusted-out trailer. Just sitting there in the
pitch-black shadow. It was scuffed up and dusty, but bright red.
The perfect bait for a curious kid.
Just sitting there, waiting. His mom called out from the car, telling him to leave it alone.
But the kid was totally hypnotized by it. He tuned her out completely. He just kept walking right toward that dark gap under the trailer. He got down on his knees in the dirt.
He was right on the edge, getting ready to crawl underneath that heavy metal frame.
He reached his little hand out into the dark.
He had no clue what was actually in there. Then a voice came from deep inside the shadows.
It was soft and sweet. It said, "Come on, little one. It's safe. Mommy will get it for you."
Chilling realization. It sounded exactly like his mother.
Every single note was perfect.
But the real mom was still standing way over by the car.
Her back was turned while she pumped gas.
Her actual voice was far away.
The trap was set, and the kid was about to crawl right into it.
I saw Tom move from all the way across the lot.
He didn't yell or make a big scene.
But his reaction was instant.
He just got up from that bench, and you could feel the sudden urgency in his bones.
He didn't exactly run, but he covered that ground with this fluid, almost unnerving speed.
His long strides just ate up the distance across the cracked asphalt.
His eye was completely locked on that rusted trailer, knowing exactly what was hiding in there.
He reached the edge of the lot right in the nick of time.
The kid was inches away from disappearing completely underneath that heavy metal frame.
Ta's shadow fell right over the boy, cutting off that sweet fake voice.
Todd dropped to one knee in the dirt right beside him.
His face was just grim, completely unyielding.
He didn't say a single word to the kid.
He just fixed that intense, one-eyed stare straight into the pitch-black darkness. From where I stood, I saw a flicker under there.
Just a ripple in the air, kind of like distorted heat rising off the pavement.
The mimic felt him looking.
It recoiled from his gaze, its whole illusion just falling apart under that stare. The little boy was pretty startled by Ta showing up out of nowhere.
He stopped crawling and just looked up at the cowboy with these wide, confused eyes.
The spell was broken.
The fake voice was gone, replaced by this towering, silent guy.
Ta didn't even blink or look away from the shadows.
He just reached his calloused hand right under the trailer.
He completely ignored that bright red ball.
Instead, he gently grabbed the kid's arm to pull him back to safety.
He pulled the boy out into the warm sunlight.
He looked the kid firmly in the eye, giving him this silent warning about wandering off.
Then he just gave a little nod, pointing the boy back toward his mom by the gas pumps.
The kid must have sensed how close he came to something awful, because he scurried right out of there.
He ran straight back to his family's car. Ta stayed kneeling there for a long, tense moment, keeping his eye locked on the darkness. Once he was sure the thing had backed off, Ta slowly stood up.
He turned his back on the trailer and just walked back to his bench like nothing even happened.
And that bright red ball, it just stayed right there in the shadows. Nobody dared go after it.
The mimic, you see, its intelligence is not human.
It operates on a completely different level.
But it is deeply ancient and profoundly malicious.
It doesn't think like a normal predator. It understands patterns.
It understands fear.
And it understands the lure of a familiar voice.
It has no use for flesh and bone.
It doesn't need to consume the body, only the sound.
The essence, the unique frequency of a human being.
It wants to take your voice, to steal your identity,
To make you a silent, empty vessel for its own insidious game.
Imagine that.
to have your own voice, your very self turned against you, used to betray others. That is the horror of the mimic, and that is what Da protects us from. Because of this, his task is endless. The mimic is not truly alive in the way we understand it, and so it cannot truly die. It is an enduring presence, a spiritual infection on the land, born from the raw emotional landscape of the wild and the vulnerabilities of the human heart. It will always be there, lurking, listening, waiting for its chance. And so Ta must always be there too. His life is a continuous act of vigilance, a constant sacrifice. He stands alone out there. He is a living bridge between the ancient ways and the modern world, protecting the innocent from a danger they cannot even comprehend. Sometimes, when the moon is full and the desert air is still, I will walk over to the truck stop. Ta will be there, even at night, a dark silhouette against the pale sky. I don't say much when I go out there. There's really no need for words between us. I'll just bring him some fry bread, or maybe a hot cup of coffee. We share this quiet understanding of the heavy burden he carries. He'll take it with a slow nod, but his eye never actually leaves the dark edge of the lot. He knows it's out there. He can feel its presence in the cold air, always waiting for a moment of weakness. The man can never truly rest. His whole life is just this continuous act of vigilance. It's a constant sacrifice that most people will never even notice. He's a living bridge between the ancient ways and our modern world. His commitment shows the real strength of our people. It's that deep-seated understanding that some duties are just bigger than what you want for yourself. He embodies this quiet heroism that keeps our whole world from unraveling. So, the next time you're driving through the Navajo Nation, pay attention. When you see that one-eyed cowboy with the worn Stetson sitting by the dusty pumps, remember what I've told you. Remember the ancient whispers of the desert and the terrible hungers that still roam out there. He isn't just some lonely old man killing time. He's the guardian. He is the absolute last line of defense. His sacrifice makes sure the laughter of our kids keeps echoing across this land, totally untainted and truly their own. He keeps the shadows pushed back so you can drive through this beautiful, treacherous place blissfully unaware. And he's gonna keep watching. He has to, because if he ever stopped, if he even faltered for a second, the mimic would step right back in to claim its prize. The desert winds wouldn't just carry sand anymore. They'd carry the stolen, mocking voices of the lost. It would take your identity, your very essence, and use it to trick the people you love. And that kind of betrayal, that's a silence way too profound and a horror way too deep for any of us to bear. So let him watch. Let the cowboy do his job. So the next time you're driving through the Navajo Nation on your way to somewhere else, and you happen to see that one-eyed cowboy sitting patiently by the dusty truck stop. Just remember what I've told you today about the things hiding in the dark.
Remember the ancient whispers of the desert that most folks just ignore.
And the terrible hungers that still roam its vast, silent expanse, waiting for a chance. He's not just some lonely old man killing time on a wooden bench.
He is the guardian of this land, the absolute last line of defense we have against something older than dirt.
He's the only one standing between the innocent kids playing by the pumps and the mimic.
He's a silent warrior whose daily sacrifice means absolutely everything to us.
It ensures that the laughter of our kids keeps echoing across this red land.
Untainted, uncorrupted, and truly their own, safe from being stolen.
He's the one out there keeping the shadows at bay, day after day.
So that you and your family can drive through this beautiful, treacherous landscape in peace.
Blissfully unaware of the horrors lurking just beyond the edge of your headlights.
And he's gonna keep watching that tree line.
He has to, because he knows exactly what's at stake.
Because if he ever stopped, if he ever faltered for even a single second, the mimic would once again claim its terrible prize from our families. It would take everything we hold dear without a second thought. And the desert winds would carry not just the red sand, but the stolen, mocking voices of the lost children, echoing through the deep canyons forever, twisting our grief into a weapon. Just waiting out there to lure the next curious kid into the shadows. And that, my friend, is the real truth of this place. That is a silence too profound for any parent to ever face. A horror way too deep for any of us to bear. So let him sit on that faded bench. Let him watch the horizon with that one good eye. We owe him our lives, our voices, and our future.
Days just kind of bleed together out here at the Crossroads.
Folks pull in, gas up, and get back on the highway without a second thought. They've got no idea what it takes to keep this stretch of road safe. Ta is always right there on that same faded bench. He might look like he's just resting his boots, but he's tracking every single movement. That one good eye doesn't miss a thing. A minivan pulls up and outspill a couple of kids full of energy after a long drive. Their laughter rings out across the pavement. Out here, that kind of sound is basically a dinner bell. He doesn't jump up or make a big scene. He just shifts his weight and tunes out the highway noise. He's listening for that one echo that doesn't belong. Miles away in the canyons, the mimic feels it. It's just a shimmer in the heat, hiding in the deep shadows where the light can't reach. It's always waiting for someone to wander off. The wind carries these faint whispers through the rocks.
If you aren't paying attention, it sounds exactly like your mom calling your name.
It uses love as a weapon, plain and simple. That red plastic ball is still sitting under the rusted trailer. Nobody's dared to go grab it since that close call. It's just gathering dust now, a quiet little reminder of what's out there.
I sit here in the quiet, just feeling the hum of the earth beneath my boots.
I see the weight Ta carries on his shoulders. It's a heavy, lonely burden, but he never complains. The kids finally pile back into their van, totally clueless about how close they were to the edge.
The doors shut, the engine revs, and they drive off into the modern world. They're safe, and they don't even know why. As they drive away, Todd just tips his hat and settles back in. The parking lot is empty again, but his watch never really ends. He's gonna stay right here, holding the line. You gotta understand, this thing isn't human. It's ancient, and it's just plain mean. It doesn't want to eat you. It wants to steal your voice, your whole identity. It's like a sickness on the land itself. Born out in the wild, feeding on our worst fears and vulnerabilities. And it's always out there, just waiting for a crack in the armor. Since that thing never really sleeps, neither can he. His whole life is just one long, unbroken watch. He's the bridge, keeping the old nightmares away from the modern world. Sometimes, when the moon is full and the air gets dead quiet, I'll take a walk over there. And sure enough, he's right where he always is. Just a shadow against the sky. I don't say much when I go see him. There's really no need for words between us anymore. I just bring him a little coffee, maybe some fry bread to keep the cold off. We just share this quiet understanding. I know the heavy load he's carrying out here all by himself. I know about the fights he's having that nobody else ever sees. He'll give me a slow nod, take the cup, but his eye never stops scanning the dark. He can feel it out there, always. The guy just can't ever let his guard down. It's a beautiful place, this desert, but it's treacherous too. There are hungers out there in the dark that most folks couldn't even begin to wrap their heads around. What he does, it shows the real strength of our people. It's that deep down knowledge that some sacrifices just have to be made. You do it for the greater good, to protect the innocent. He's the ultimate quiet hero. No headlines, no glory. Just a man giving up his own life so the rest of our world doesn't completely unravel in the dark. So the next time you pass through the Navajo Nation, and you see the one-eyed cowboy with the worn Stetson sitting patiently near that dusty truck stop, watching the children, remember what I've told you today. Remember the ancient whispers of the desert, and the terrible hungers that still roam its vast, silent expanse. He's not just some lonely old man killing time. He is the guardian. He's the last line of defense. He's the one who stands between the innocent and the mimic. A silent warrior whose sacrifice means everything. It ensures that the laughter of our children continues to echo across this land, untainted, uncorrupted, and truly their own. He keeps the shadows at bay, so that you and your family can drive through this beautiful, treacherous landscape, blissfully unaware of the horrors that lurk just beyond the edge of the light. And he's gonna keep washing. He has to, because if he ever stopped, if he ever faltered, the mimic would once again claim its terrible prize. The desert winds would carry not just sand, but the stolen, mocking voices of the lost. And that, my friend, that is a silence too profound, a horror too deep for any of us to bear. So the next time you pass through the Navajo Nation, take a good look around you. It's a beautiful drive, stretching out under that massive sky. But there's a whole lot of history out there that you just don't see from the highway. And if you happen to see the one-eyed cowboy with the worn Stetson sitting patiently near that dusty truck stop,
just watching the children play.
Don't just write him off as some lonely old drifter.
I want you to remember what I've told you today.
Remember the ancient whispers of the desert, echoing through those deep canyons. Listen to the wind when it moves through the juniper trees, carrying the old stories.
And remember the terrible hungers that still roam its vast, silent expanse. Things that have been hiding out here long before the asphalt was ever poured.
Ancient things that are always waiting, always listening, and always hungry.
That man on the bench is not just a lonely old guy.
He is the guardian of this land. He is the absolute last line of defense we have against the dark.
He is the one who stands between the innocent and the mimic.
A silent warrior holding back a nightmare that most people can't even comprehend.
He gave up his own normal life, his own future, just for this duty. His sacrifice ensures that the laughter of our children continues to echo across this land. Untainted, uncorrupted, and safe from the shadows.
He makes sure their voices remain truly their own.
He's the one who keeps the shadows at bay, so that you and your children can drive through this beautiful, treacherous landscape, safe and sound in your cars, without a care in the world.
You get to be blissfully unaware of the horrors that lurk just beyond the edge of the light.
And honestly, that's exactly how it should be. He carries that heavy burden so the rest of us don't have to. And he will keep watching, day after day.
He has to, because if he ever stopped, the silence that would follow is just too profound to bear.
So the next time you pass through the Navajo Nation, and you see the one-eyed cowboy with the worn Stetson sitting patiently near that dusty truck stop, watching the children play, remember what I've told you today.
Remember the ancient whispers of the desert.
And the terrible hungers that still roam its vast, silent expanse. He's not just some lonely old man. He is the guardian. He's the absolute last line of defense. He's the one who stands between the innocent and the mimic. A silent warrior whose sacrifice ensures that the laughter of our children continues to echo across this land. Untainted, uncorrupted, and truly their own. He's the one who keeps the shadows at bay, so that you and your kids can drive through this beautiful, treacherous landscape, blissfully unaware of the horrors that lurk just beyond the edge of the light. And he's gonna keep watching. He has to. Because if he ever stopped, if he ever faltered, the mimic would once again claim its terrible prize. And the desert winds would carry not just sand, but the stolen, mocking voices of the lost. And that, my friend, is a silence too profound. A horror way too deep for any of us to bear. So the next time you're driving through the Navajo Nation, and you happen to spot that one-eyed cowboy with the worn-out Stetson, just sitting there patiently by that dusty truck stop, watching the kids run around the gas pumps, I want you to remember everything I've told you today.
Remember the ancient whispers echoing out in that desert.
And don't forget about the terrible hungers that still roam out there in that vast, silent expanse. He's not just some lonely old man killing time. He is the guardian of this land. He's the absolute last line of defense we have, standing right between our innocent kids and the mimic.
He's a silent warrior, fighting a war nobody else even sees.
And it's his sacrifice that keeps the darkness pushed back, day in and day out.
Because of him, the laughter of our children gets to keep echoing across this beautiful land.
Completely untainted, uncorrupted, and truly their own.
They get to just be kids.
He's the one who keeps those shadows at bay, so that you and your family can drive through this treacherous landscape without a second thought.
You get to remain blissfully unaware of the horrors lurking just beyond the edge of the light.
But he can't ever look away.
Not even for a second. He's got to keep watching. He has to.
Because if he ever stopped, if he ever faltered for just one moment,
the mimic would take everything.
That thing would once again claim its terrible prize.
And the desert winds would carry the stolen, mocking voices of the lost.
A sound you never want to hear. Sometimes, when the moon is full and the desert air is dead still, I'll walk over to the truck stop.
The night brings a different kind of quiet out here.
But the danger doesn't sleep.
Ta will be there, even in the dead of night.
He's just a dark silhouette against the pale sky.
I don't really say much to him.
There's no need for words between us. We share this silent understanding, you know?
A deep knowledge of the heavy burdens he carries.
I'll bring him some fry bread or a hot cup of coffee.
He just gives me a slow nod. His gaze never actually leaves the surrounding darkness.
He knows it's out there.
He feels its presence, always pressing in on the edges.
The man can never truly rest.
His commitment is a real testament to the strength of our people.
It's that deep-seated understanding that some duties are just bigger than what we want for ourselves.
It's a quiet kind of heroism.
So the next time you're driving through the Navajo Nation
And you see that one-eyed cowboy with the worn Stetson,
remember what I've told you today.
Remember the ancient whispers of this desert.
when you see him sitting patiently near that dusty truck stop watching the kids, know that he's not just some lonely old man. He is the guardian. He's our absolute last line of defense. He stands right between the innocent and the mimic. He's a silent warrior, making sure the laughter of our children stays their own. He keeps the shadows at bay so you can pass through safely. And he's gonna keep watching. He has to.
Because if he ever stopped, if he even faltered for a second,
the mimic would claim its terrible prize all over again. The desert winds would carry nothing but the stolen, mocking voices of the lost. And that, my friend, that is a silence way too profound for any of us to bear.